Hey everyone, Alan here, Talkin Tunes, and we're talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2020 inductees. We've got 6 just announced today after the fan voting closed this past Friday. The ballots went out to 1,000 different, 1,000 plus, I guess, different people to cast their ballot, which is among media members, and I believe it's also prior inductees get to make their choice as well. So there's a ballot of 16 people, I believe, and they decided, the deciding votes have an induction this year of the Doobie Brothers, Whitney Houston, Depeche Mode, T-Rex, 9 Inch Nails, and Notorious B.I.G. And again, that was out of 16 different nominees that were announced late last year. They had a fan voting going on for 3 months or so, 2.5 months I think it was, just closed this past Friday. And in the fan vote, it saw a top 5 of, if I'm correct, well, I know for sure Dave Matthews Band had over 1 million votes at number 1. Number 2 was Pat Benatar, which I think was just a little over 100,000 votes behind as far as the fan voting goes. Also in the top 3, number 3 was Doobie Brothers. Number 4, I believe, ended up Soundgarden. Number 5, Judas Priest in the top 5 voting. And if my memory serves me correct, the additional nominees being Whitney Houston, Depeche Mode, also Rufus featuring Shaka Khan, Kraftwerk, Todd Rundgren, mentioned 9 Inch Nails, Notorious B.I.G, MC5 was in there, and there's a few that are eluding me right now, but the final vote of 6 again is the Doobie Brothers, Whitney Houston, Depeche Mode, T-Rex, 9 Inch Nails, and Notorious B.I.G. Now I have a few thoughts here. I know my buddy ConcertVids34 I'm sure will get in here shortly with his take on Dave Matthews Band finishing number 1 in the fan vote, but not being inducted this year. Now, I myself, a big fan of Dave Matthews Band, a big proponent for them to get in this year. It means neither here nor there to me that they didn't. Doesn't give me any sort of validation or anything of the band. They're still one of my favorite bands, still will be. It was interesting to point out, though, talking about the fan vote. Now, for those that don't know, the Rock Hall for the past, I believe, 7 years, maybe this was the 8th, but I know for sure 7 years, they put out a online poll for fan voting for the inductees, for people to vote daily on who they feel, from a fan perspective, should be voted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, Dave Matthews Band, I should say the last 7, or at least every year since they started it, the number 1 vote getter in the fan vote, which is clearly a coincidental thing, coincidentally got inducted that year into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Okay, Dave Matthews Band, I think they have the number 2 officially overall vote of over 1 million. Bon Jovi came in at like 1.1 million with the final vote as far as fan voting goes. Now this fan voting, the top 5 vote getters in the fan voting poll, they get 1 vote out of these 1,000 plus votes. So essentially Dave Matthews Band got 1 vote from the fans, as did Doobie Brothers, Pat Benatar, Judas Priest, and Soundgarden. So that all equated to just 1 vote. So it's just kind of more of a promotional thing, marketing thing, and fun for the fans to, you know, speak their voice. So Dave Matthews Band fans spoke their voice by getting over 1 million votes on the fan voting. Okay, now this is the first year Dave Matthews Band the first year the first place vote getter did not make it into the inductees. Okay, now there's a lot of articles about that being something that's probably going to happen, and I don't think there's really much to look into it about. I mean, I'm sure that Dave Matthews Band still got a lot of votes, as far as the ballots were concerned. I don't know if they released that. That'd be interesting to see if they released something like that, where the final vote getters. Now, for me personally, these were the artists that I felt were deserving. I think all of them had, aside from maybe a few, I don't think really are that deserving of being in the Rock Hall. Not because they haven't done anything or made their stamp on popular music or rock music or whatever. But my votes were for Doobie Brothers, Pat Benatar. I also was going to go with Dave Matthews Band, so that's the three. And then the toss-up for me, actually, the toss-up was more of like the Doobie Brothers. I feel they should get in, but I could see them being tossed up with like either Depeche Mode, okay, they're definitely worthy of getting in, or Kraftwerk, okay, but Depeche Mode and Kraftwerk and even 9 Inch Nails, to me, which I'll get to, kind of fill that same void of electronic rock, industrial type music. But I think Kraftwerk and Todd Rundgren definitely deserve recognition. Not that they're not getting recognition by just being there, but I think that they were definitely worthy of being inducted. Todd Rundgren and Kraftwerk, who finished low on the fan voting. Okay, so that's my 5. I know that was kind of a jumbled 5, but for sure I felt or feel Dave Matthews Band, Pat Benatar, and like I said, Todd Rundgren, Kraftwerk, and again you could interchange maybe Kraftwerk with Doobie Brothers or Depeche Mode. Now they ended up with 6. I was under the impression it was actually a top 5. I believe in the past it was top 5. I could be wrong on that. Okay, but if you want to go 6, then I'd say Dave Matthews Band, Pat Benatar, Doobie Brothers. That's 3. So then you can go Kraftwerk, Todd Rundgren, and I'd say Depeche Mode or Judas Priest probably. So those are what I feel among this class of nominees. Again, not that other bands don't have something to say about that as far as making their mark on music and what they've done in their careers and being worthy of being part of the Rock Hall. Now, a few bands, T-Rex, who got inducted, sure, I can appreciate them as an artist, as an act, what they did for rock and roll. But to me, the other bands, to me, have a bigger breadth of things in their career that kind of lead them in the Rock Hall direction. But that's just my opinion. That's all. Also, MC5, of course, they did a lot for punk rock and stuff like that. And not huge into MC5, but I recognize what they mean to rock and roll. And I just think that not everybody who means everything to rock and roll needs to get in. And it's not that I don't feel necessarily they shouldn't get in. I just, among the nominees, those 2 probably you could leave out. And then definitely, in my opinion, well, let me go to this. Let me go to the inductees that were inducted for the 2020 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame class. So I mentioned the Doobie Brothers, which, sure, fine. I feel well enough they were part of the artists that I would pick if I had a ballot. Okay, next, Whitney Houston. Definitely a lot to recognize as far as her career as an artist, what she's done in the music industry as a pop artist. And then you get into that gray area about it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, not the Pop Hall of Fame, not the R&B Hall of Fame, not the Hip Hop Hall of Fame, etc. And I know that Rock Hall has done this in the past, and there's no denying that. Okay, but among those inducted, I would rather see Pat Benatar in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame than Whitney Houston. That's all. That's just as simple as that. That's my take on that. Okay, and then next we have Depeche Mode, which I feel they've done a lot to obviously merge the electronic, the synth pop, and the rock music, generally speaking, as a whole to warrant induction. So that's fair enough. I'll go with that. T-Rex, I just mentioned about T-Rex. Among this class of nominees, I feel they could have been left out. Not as worthy as some of the other artists. And then I mentioned that Nine Inch Nails. Nine Inch Nails, they kind of fill the same void as Depeche Mode. I feel Depeche Mode's probably a lot more worthy than Nine Inch Nails. I think Nine Inch Nails kind of maybe bumped off Dave Matthews Band as far as getting that 90s alternative rock act. They filled the void for that, so maybe that's why Dave Matthews Band didn't get in. The people with the ballads felt Nine Inch Nails maybe had more of an impact or more of a deserving to get into the Rock Hall in comparing 90s alternative acts, if you will, because obviously that's where Dave Matthews Band kind of sits among the general population, so to speak, 90s alternative rock. But we'll go on. Nine Inch Nails also, I believe Trent Reznor was quoted as saying he didn't really care about the Rock Hall. He has roots in Cleveland. I know that, and it's interesting to see how he'll take this, which I'm sure he'll appreciate. But I believe I saw an article, the headline was kind of he didn't care. And that was before they were inducted, so we'll see. And Notorious B.I.G., look, it's hip-hop. To me, there's no reason for him being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Certainly, there's a lot to say about him in the hip-hop industry. And to me, as far as hip-hop goes, I've said this to a lot of people, to me, the only hip-hop artists that belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or even considered or discussed, which they are part of it, are Beastie Boys and Run DMC. Those are the only two, because what they did with rock music, Beastie Boys started off as a rock act, way back in the day, punk rock, and they still, did a lot with rock music, for rock music, and definitely inspired a lot of rock music, rap rock type, that type of stuff. But those two really, I think, the only ones that should be considered or discussed. You're talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the two hip-hop acts. So those are the 6 that were inducted. Again, Doobie Brothers, Whitney Houston, Depeche Mode, T-Rex, Nine Inch Nails, and Notorious B.I.G. It's going to be held, the ceremony, in Cleveland this year, May 5th, 2020. And the part of the reason I was kind of hoping for Dave Matthews Band this year, I have a chance to go to the ceremony and witness that. So that would have been really cool to do that. And it's, unfortunately they didn't get in this year. But again, neither here nor there. I know the band had a passionate fan base, and that's good. That's great. And I don't know that you'd say they were snubbed. I mean, a lot of people are going to say they were snubbed. I don't think so necessarily. I mean, it is what it is, and maybe we'll see if they get up for nominee this year. Do I feel that band like Dave Matthews Band, which they were the talk of beforehand because they jetted up to first place and stayed there they jetted up quickly and they stayed there for a long time. They ended up #1 and they got over the 1 million fan votes, but they were the talk of kind of the nominees because of that. Now they're the talk because not everyone, I wouldn't say they're the talk, but it's definitely a talking point to say they got snubbed because they were #1, but that's not how it works. Just because you get #1 in the fan vote, it's not guaranteed, even though it was 100% guaranteed in the past. So Dave Matthews Band, my favorite band among the bunch, so it's disappointing they didn't get inducted, but they do have a passionate fan base, and I'm sure that if they get nominated again, that fans will come through as far as fan voting, and we'll see what happens as far as the official ballot goes if they do get nominated again. So it's overall a decent class, I'd say. A couple artists, as I mentioned, I feel that it's kind of a waste. Should have went to more deserving people. Dave Matthews Band or not, could even leave them out. There's a couple artists, like I said, should have went to some more deserving people. But that's just my thoughts on the 2020 inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So what are you guys' thoughts? You leave a comment below. Curious to see what you guys think. And check out Concert Vids 34, his channel. I'm sure he'll be talking about Dave Matthews Band and them not getting inducted, and we'll see if he feels they were snubbed or not, or what his thoughts are. He always has some good intelligent conversation to talk about Dave Matthews Band and some other artists, and also he's got some cool videos from different shows he's going to you know, over the course of the year. So check out his channel, and appreciate you talking tunes with me here, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2020 inductees.